I measure only 20V 20 AC on one leg of the 220V service line. The other leg has 120V. I also can't find the breaker that services the line. It's for an AC with an external slow breaker box, and the fusses show conductivity, and I am measuring the voltage at the AC junction box input lines. I am testing from the hot wire to ground in both cases. Any idea as to what is going on? Also, the rest of the house's units appear to be operating normally.
How can I help with your electrical question?
I measure only 20V 20 AC on one leg of the 220V service line. The other leg has 120V. I also can't find the breaker that services the line. It's for an AC with an external slow breaker box, and the fusses show conductivity, and I am measuring the voltage at the AC junction box input lines. I am testing from the hot wire to ground in both cases. Any idea as to what is going on? Also, the rest of the house's units appear to be operating normally.
Have you talked to an electrician about your circuit breaker?
No.
How long has this been going on with your circuit breaker? What have you tried so far?
The AC died a couple of days ago. I have reset all of the house breakers, and as stated, checked the line voltage at the unit box.
Anything else we should know to help you best?
The AC had been working prior to it stopping the day before.
Hello and welcome to Just Answer. My name is I will be happy to assist you with your electrical question. Please be patient as it takes time to type and provide links. Also note that the website may be sending you a telephone offer. The offer is not originating from me. Therefore, disregard the phone offer as it is only an option. I'm sorry to hear you're having problems. I know that can be frustrating. Hopefully, we can get this resolved quickly. If you receive emails, those are originating from the website and not from me. I do not have your email address. 1. Sounds like the panel is not labeled since you are not able to identify the breaker. The AC unit should reside on a double pole breaker. Therefore, kill power to each double pole breaker, one at a time while you take voltage at the AC unit. Once you are not able to measure voltage, then that's the double pole breaker for the AC unit. Label the panel. 2. At the double pole breaker for the AC unit and at the fuse box, can you measure approximately 240 volts from hot to hot?
I checked all the double pole, and also the single pole, breakers in the bus box and sub-panel box, earlier, and could not find a breaker that killed the 120V hot line. Yes, I could kill the power by pulling the house 2x50 amp street line. I tried checking for 240 hot to hot, but did not get 240V.
1. Then kill power to one breaker at a time until you locate the AC breaker. If the AC unit is for central air, should be on a 30 or 40 amp double pole breaker. 2. Since not able to measure 240 across the two hots and only 20 volts from one hot to ground, that hot wire is either a loose termination or a faulty splice or an issue with the breaker. You've lost one phase of the 240 volt circuit.
I did the one breaker at a time method, and got 120V, on the one live line, every time. Could they have wired it directly to the house service panel? Maybe loose terminal screw. We'll try that.
1. If none of the breakers kill power to the AC unit, then there is a double tap at the main breaker or at the panel main lugs, which is a code and safety issue.
What is a double tap? BTW, I checked the lug screws on the junction box at the unit and they were both tight, and the hot-to-hot gave a 90V reading. As I had said, there was 2 slow fuses in the junction box at the unit. I'm taking my reading before the fuses.
1. This circuit also requires to be protected with a double pole breaker at the main panel or if you have a subpanel. 2. A double tap is where there are 2 wires terminated to one lug at the main breaker or if the panel is a main lug type and does not contain a main breaker. On a main breaker or a main lug panel, only one hot wire is terminated to each separate lug. 3. The fuse box that you are taking measurements at is a disconnect box. There should be an upstream double pole breaker for the AC unit. 4. Remove the door from the main electrical panel and send me a picture so I can see the wiring and the breakers.
Not sure how to send pic.
1. There should be a paperclip icon on your end where you can attach a JPEG/pic file.
Just found it. Here you go.
That's the main breaker disconnect on the exterior. I need a pic of the panel with the individual breakers.
Oh boy, that is not clean and simple. There wouldn't be any way to trace out the AC line from what I saw, but I will go out and take a picture for the main house fuse box.
1. Well, part of the problem is the electrical panel is not labeled properly. All breakers should be labeled for the electric appliances as well as the other areas/rooms in the house.
I didn't do the wiring for the AC. And I thought the furnace breaker was for the AC too, but it doesn't look like it. Here is the inside of the main house breaker box. BTW, there is an outside cover, which I removed so you could see inside the breaker box. With labels.
1. The furnace and central AC unit each have their own separate breakers. 2. I see the pic you sent me for the panel, but it is blurred and not clear. I can see red/blue breaker handles but not clearly.
Is this better?
A little better. 1. How many electric appliances does the house have? Any electric range or cooktop or hot water heater or dryer? 2. Looks like there are 3 40-amp breakers. Typically an AC unit is a 40-amp. What are the 2 other 40-amp breakers being used for?
50/50A for subpanel, shop, 30/30A dryer, 40/40 range, 40/40A oven, 20/20A furnace. Breakers and subpanel are not set up for 220 service. Lights and power strips.
1. On the left side of the panel towards the top, is that also a 40-amp? I see 2 40-amps on the right side of the panel. 2. Yes, a range and oven are typically 40 amps each and a dryer is 30 amps.
That's the 50/50A subpanel.
1. I'm not seeing any double taps on any of the individual breakers. 2. Okay, on the 50-amp breaker for the sub. 1. How many wires are terminated at the outside main breaker? 2 on the top lugs and 2 on the bottom lugs, is that correct? 1. I'm wondering if someone tapped into either the range or oven circuit. Ever ran both of these at the same time the AC unit was running? If so, did any breakers trip?
Here is the subpanel. Here is a closer look at the main top. The mid.
1. Remove the door on the subpanel. Looks like it is a main lug panel and no main breaker. Confirm if there are only 2 hot wires from the feeder circuit terminated to the 2 hot lugs at the subpanel and no double tap exists. Rick the pics. Thanks.
Bottom. Sorry, my camera doesn't do close-ups well. Are you talking about the box at the AC or the sub-panel in the house? The AC has two, red and black, and ground.
1. The sub-panel. 2. How many wires are terminated at the outside main breaker? 2 on the top lugs and 2 on the bottom lugs, is that correct?
The house sub-panel has 2 blacks, a white common, and a ground. The breakers on the shop sub-panel are all 20A singles. Yes, outside 2 into the slow fuse, and 2 out, then the disconnect. Before going into the AC itself.
Thanks for confirming. Those are all the correct wiring methods. 1. I'm running out of ideas as to why the AC unit is not protected by a breaker. The only thing I can now recommend is to purchase a toner/probe at Home Depot and place it on the AC wires with the main breaker killed. Then go to the main panel and the sub-panel with the probe and trace out via an audible sound where the AC wires are terminate to. Make sure the main breaker is dead, otherwise you will destroy the toner/probe. 2. Here is a link shown at Home Depot for a toner/probe tester. https://www.homedepot.com/p/kleintools tone and probe tester and tracer kit VDV 50705 311,456,018.
Like I said earlier, I systematically turned off all the panel breakers, main and sub, and the 120V voltage to the AC was still on. So I don't think they have tied into any of the other lean. Sorry, cap locks got turned on. Only when I turned to the street power, did the 120V and 20V volt line go dead. So I don't know where it is coming from, and the 20V instead of 120V doesn't make sense.
1. Then there must be a double tap at either the main disconnect breaker or inside the exterior meter. Those are the only 2 possibilities to kill power to the house.
What would cause a 20V instead of 120V line voltage?
1. Loose wire termination.
If double tap means that both sides of a 220V box are pulled out, the disconnect, yes at the AC, but nowhere else I know of. A loose wire doesn't seem like the case at the AC. Those screws were tight, oxidation. Is that an issue? Can I tone out the line with a volt-ohm meter?
1. A double tap means that 2 wires are terminated to 1 screw or to 1 lug. Code only allows 1 wire per screw or per lug. 2. AC units are always protected by a double pole breaker along with an exterior disconnect behind the AC unit. The exterior disconnect can either be fused or non-fusible. 3. Oxidation is a possible issue if the wires are aluminum and not copper. 4. Can only use a multimeter to perform a continuity test when the wires are disconnected. A toner/probe tester is the quickest method to locate where the 2 hot wires at the exterior disconnect switch are originating from. 1. If you kill power to all of the individual breakers in each panel and leave the main breaker in the on position, then that suggests a double tap either at the main breaker or inside the meter enclosure if 120 volts is still present on one of the AC legs. 1. How many amps are the fuses at the exterior AC disconnect box?
How about a 9 volts battery touching one end of the wire, still connected and ground, and the other at the box, probing wire with a volt-ohm to ground? Would that work?
1. What is the approximate age of the home? 2. Won't work since all hot wires are terminated to a common bus bar inside the panel. Would need to temporarily de-install each breaker at a time to get it off of the hot bus bar and isolate that particular circuit. Toner/probe is the easiest method.
It looks like the fusible link at the AC unit is 50A. And I see your point with regards ground. On each leg. Home age 30 to 35 years.
1. Yes, the hot bus bar is common to all of the breakers. Therefore, if using a 9-volt battery, each breaker, one at a time, would need to be removed to isolate it from the hot bus bar. 2. Is the exterior AC disconnect wired with conduit or a cable? If conduit, often, you can gently tug on the wires back and forth and have someone listen at the panel or along the way. It is possible, but not that common, to have a splice or a junction box for the AC unit. Most of the time, the circuit is a home run directly back to the panel. 3. 30 to 35 years old is not that old of a house. Code required a dedicated 240-volt circuit with a double pole breaker even back in 1985 for central AC units, along with a fusible or a non-fusible exterior disco switch located directly behind or next to the AC unit.
I think one electrician I brought in to hook up the sub-panel years ago said we did have some at wires.
1. Maybe the service entrance wires from the meter to the main breaker and or the 50 amp sub-panel feeder circuit are aluminum, but doubtful that the individual branch breakers are. I can see copper at a few of the breakers' lug terminations. Aluminum for inside wiring has not been allowed on residential since the mid-1970s.
The cable is rubberized cox, individual wires within.
Okay, since cable, no luck tugging on individual wires then. 1. If the panel breakers are not properly labeled, you need to create a circuit map when you have time. See attached for an example of a circuit map. Also get some number stickers sold at Home Depot in the electrical aisle and label each hot wire in the panel with its respective circuit number.
BTW, I just checked the build date of the house, and it was 1978, so most likely not all wires. Your thoughts? I guess we have run into the advice wall. Any more thoughts on what I should do?
1. Look at the insulation on the wires. They will be labeled as either CHU for copper or AL for aluminum. 2. At a toner/probe tester is my recommendation. 1. If the ground wires are copper, so are the hot and neutral wires.
Oh, that is good insight. That's easier to check. I guess I have wasted enough of your time. Thanks.
Was not a waste of time. No worries, all is good. We can continue tomorrow if you want. Take care and have a good evening. Thanks. Kevin.
Thanks, take you up on it. Stay safe. Keith.
No problem, take care for now.
Kevin, I think I have found the power voltage problem. And the main source line looks out too. Looks like the outside junction box has failed and the wires are burnt. How is the best to fix? BTW, I still haven't traced out the power source in the main breaker box, so I will be turning off the power at the main line, street, box. Just to be safe. Should I replace the entire box with a new metal one or plastic? It outside. Also, when I cut back and reattach the wires, what is the best method? It will be AL to CHU. I think I have some electrical insulation grease, but may just buy new, so how is it best to reattach the ends? Should I wrap with insulation tape too? Can't find my old electrical grease, so what is the best grease for this job? Big twist locks or copper band clamps? It looks like they used the big twist connectors originally. And they failed terribly. I'm not used to working with such large gauge wire. And mixed metals.
1. If the wires have burnt insulation, the insulation needs to be removed, cut back the wire and make a new splice or termination. 2. No-Lox is sold at Home Depot as an antioxidant. See this link, https://www.homedepot.com/p/ideal No-Lox 0 to 5 ounce antioxidant joint compound 30224 202,276,207.3. I recommend to replace the box. If the box has metal conduit, then use a metal replacement. If PVC conduit, then use a PVC box. 4. See if you can trace the wires at the conduit. Where do they extend to? 5. Polaris multi-tap connectors are recommended, but you may require a larger box to house them. See this link, https://www.homedepot.com/p/Polaris 600 mcm 6AWG bagged insulated multi-tap connector black IPLD 603B/303578304.
Thanks, I'll let you know how it goes. May take me a while.
No problem, just reply back to me. Thanks. Kevin. 1. If there are more than 2 wires in each splice, that may be the double tap location. Where does that conduit originate and extend to?
From what I can tell visually, it comes from the 250 amp breakers, just based upon wire size and type, but not from the sub-panel. Also, I had opened the 250 amp breakers and the AC still had power. But since the junction box was an original item, the wiring looking like it was from the original build. Eyow. I had the AC moved away from the house maybe 15 to 20 years ago, and the AC tech that did the rewiring used metal conduit from the box to the AC unit under the concrete walkway. I don't see double taps. But there is a junction box behind some shelving, which will be impossible to get to easily, at which the sub-panel comes out of. But again, throwing the breaker on the main inside house box should have killed the power to the AC and it didn't. So still a mystery.
1. I thought the main disconnect is located on the exterior of the house next to the meter. 2. Trace that conduit and you will find the mystery.
Kevin, I finally found the breaker to the AC. It was in the external breaker box next to the meter. I misrepresented the breakers in the box. There are 2 double pull breakers in the box, 50/50 and 50/50A. I misunderstood their role. Okay, finally I know where the power is coming from and I can turn it off. If I use a Morris black insulated inline splice connector, 2 to 14 wire range, slotted Allen hex, would that be the best? I still need the grease too. I assume, and I'd need 4, 1 for each 120, and 1 for common, and 1 for ground, although I am not sure if the common is the same as ground for an outside hookup. Please advise. Also, what is the correct type of box? I know you advised it should be metal, but there seems to be several styles, and I'm not sure which one to use. Lastly, should I still wrap the Morris connectors with block electrical tape after I have attached them? Thanks for your advice.
Okay, glad you located the breakers. No problem, glad to assist. 1. No-Lox antioxidant paste is only required for aluminum conductors. If the conductors are copper, you don't require No-Lox paste. 2. The exterior junction/splice box is required by code to be a NEMA 3 or rated, which is a weather-rated box. You can use either a metal or a gray PVC NEMA 3 or box for the splices. I prefer the metal boxes. Seems like the PVC boxes deteriorate over the years due to UV sunlight. But either type of box are code compliant. 3. The Polaris multi-tap connectors are recommended. The connectors are insulated and electrical tape is not required, only an Allen wrench to torque the wires. The AC circuit will only have 3 wires. E.2 hots and 1 ground. You would require 1 Polaris for each of the 3 splices. Therefore, you need 3 separate Polaris connectors. Any local electrical supply store will carry the Polaris multi-tap connectors. If you have any additional questions, just let me know and I'll be glad to answer them for you. Otherwise, don't forget to rate me before you log off so I can receive credit for answering your question. Thanks. Kevin.
Well, maybe not the last. I noticed on the AC, wires coming out of the conduit, but the ground wire was paper wrapped. I thought conduit wires were singles, so why would the copper ground be paper wrapped? I looked close and it looks like a cable bundle. No single wires? And the 1 copper wire's installation looks pretty bad. What gauge wire do I need if I want to replace the copper wire running from the junction box to the AC, ~6 feet run/pull? Are Morris inline the same as a multi-tap? And are Morris and Polaris different?
1. Morris manufactures both multi-tap and inline. If a multi-tap, yes, they are the same as Polaris connectors too. Many cable manufacturers placed a paper around the ground wire back in the day. The ground wire should be bare copper when the paper is removed. You have a very old style of wires is all. 3. A 50 amp circuit requires THWN rated insulation of copper using 8 AWG at 75 degrees Celsius rating. 1. Is the conduit metal or PVC? If metal conduit, there was no need to install a copper ground wire since metal conduit acts as the equipment grounding conductor. Not sure why they installed a cable inside a conduit. Pretty much a waste of money. On a conduit system, individual wires are always installed and never a cable.
Great advice. Thanks. I don't want to close yet since I may have addition questions going forward. But I will give you a 5-star rating. Hope that is okay.
Okay, very good. No problem at all. If you have additional questions, just reply back to me here on the same question. Thanks. Kevin.
Kevin, sorry to bug you again, but WRT wire, THWN 8 AWG for black and red, but when I look into the house wall junction box, I see 2 black AL wires and a breaded AL ground wire. But leading out of the box to the AC I see 3 wires, black and white and breaded copper ground, and a 4th wire, solid copper, and at the AC box, I have 3 wires, 1 black, 1 red and a single solid copper wire. There are no additional junction boxes above ground between the house and the AC. And I doubt there is one underground, but maybe. Concrete overlay. So hard to tell without busting up the concrete. I haven't tried to pull the old wire out yet, but maybe that is the only way to know what is happening. What is your recommendation? Also, Home Depot only carries THHN 8 AWG wire. I've heard some wire are rated THHN or really THHN/THWN. How do you tell, and is it a big deal? Also, should I be using solid copper or green 8G wire as my ground? Thanks. Keith.
1. Most wire is dual rated as both THHN/THWN. The rating will be labeled on the exterior of the wire insulation. For exterior, the conductors must have a THWN rating. The W stands for wet rated. 2. Whoever wired the AC unit changed wire colors on you. That is never recommended. 1. Most wire is dual rated as both THHN/THWN. The rating will be labeled on the exterior of the wire insulation. For exterior, the conductors must have a THWN rating. The W stands for wet rated. 2. Whoever wired the AC unit changed wire colors on you. That is never recommended. The wiring of the AC unit should have been a home run from the electrical panel directly to the exterior disconnect without any junction boxes. Then from the disconnect to the AC unit using Liquid-Tight. Whoever wired up the AC unit was not an experienced electrician.
Kevin, so I removed the electrical junction box and cut the conduit, metal, right after the first 90-degree bend. There are 2 more 90-degree bends underground. And I tried to pull the old wiring cable out, 20 feet, but with no luck. I even got my 28-year son to try, but he had no luck. So I was thinking that I would install 2 exterior junction boxes, one to replace the first 90-degree bend, and the second one going into the house. Your thoughts? After further investigation, I discovered the electrician blunt cut the white wire at both ends and used the red/black and bare copper wires only. Of the 4-wire sheathed cable. And what I thought was a bundle of bare copper wires, turned out to be the red wire with several inches of the insulation completely burnt off. However, now that I have exposed over 12 inches of old good wire, 2 feet downstream of the burnt wires, I was wondering if I could cut and reuse these old good wires at the new 90-degree junction box, then replace the burnt wires with new 8-AUG THWN wire. Black, red and bare copper, in new exterior conduit to the new house junction box. Your thoughts? I too would have to blunt cut the white wire that exists in the existing old portion of the wire, but it would be no different than what the first guy did. The remaining old good wire is that portion running underground and covered with concrete which I can't pull out. Your comments? Also, do I have to use metal conduit and junctions boxes to replace the old house junction box and the new 90-degree junction box and the replacement segment of old conduit I have cut off, while trying to pull out the old cable? Would PVC or weatherized, plastic-coated, flex conduit be okay? Again, your advice. Thanks, BTW. It is going to reach 111F, new record hot. Keith, PS, if I can't do it this way, I probably will have to bust up the concrete over the underground conduit and relay new conduit, and pour more concrete, but still tie into the old L50 amp house wiring with an external junction box. Because completely rewiring the 50 amp circuit sounds like a much bigger project.
1. First off, the electrician who wired the circuit either didn't care or was inexperienced. Whenever running conduit, an electrician will always install separate wires and never a cable inside a conduit. You had metal conduit which is allowed to act as the ground. All the electrician had to do was pull one black and one red, and that would be the AC circuit. An inexperienced electrician, in my opinion. Yes, pulling cable out of a conduit is very difficult and often impossible, especially underground since it's been soaked in water for many years. Pulling out individual wires is much easier. 2. PVC conduit is allowed by the National Electrical Code but may not be allowed by your local code. Keep in mind that local codes always take precedence over the NEC. You would need to confirm with the local electrical inspector if PVC conduit is allowed. Flex conduit is only used for a short connection and never used entirely for a lengthy circuit run. 3. It will be much easier to either install pull boxes or pound fittings, conduit bodies, to loop the conduit from one box or one pound fitting to another. There should be no need to make splices. The more splices in a circuit, the more potential problems. 90-degree elbows can also be difficult to pull through. Code require no more than 360 degrees of bends from box to box. Maximum of 490-degree elbows. 4. Is the concrete a sidewalk, walkway, or a driveway or a patio?
Kevin, I agree, he may have been inexperienced. I'm not even sure he used Al/copper grease by the looks of the burnt wire. I will check WRT PVC, but the local Home Depot carries it, so I assume so. But we'll check. Can you make a junction/splice between two wires in a pull box? I didn't think so. That is why I assumed I needed a new junction box at that location. What about me using the old good wire that runs underground, and just add the new wire to replace the 2 feet of the old wire? Part of the existing conduit runs under a sidewalk, 3 to 4 inches thick and 4 to 5 feet wide. If I could pull out the old cable, I would. I have tried, but just replacing the one segment of conduit, new wires, and 2 new junction boxes seems a lot easier than busting out the old sidewalk and replacing all new conduit and boxes/or pull boxes. It could be done, but it seems like a lot of work to dig up the old conduit to remove the old wire and reinstall everything.
1. Wire splices are allowed in any accessible junction box or even a conduit body as long as the fill ratio is not exceeded. There should not be a need to make splices. You can use a large enough JB to just loop the wires through a junction box and splices are not required. Whenever making splices, that can lead into future problems as splices can always come loose over time. 2. You can abandon the conduit under the sidewalk. Dig a trench, 3 feet long, around both sides, perpendicular, of the walkway and make the conduit longer than what is required. Get a hose and blast both sides of the sidewalk with water to loosen up the soil. You can also dig at least 1 foot into each end of the walk if not more. Let the water penetrate the soil for at least 1 hour. This will soften it up. Then get some rigid metal conduit and a sledgehammer. Pound the rigid metal conduit under the sidewalk. Once it comes out at one end, it will be full of dirt or clay. At the end where you use a sledgehammer, cut off the damaged end with a sawzall and replace with a compression coupling. You will also need a fish tape or some heavy wire size to clean out the conduit. You can also use a smaller conduit or plumbing PVC pipe to clean out the rigid metal conduit. You can try blasting the new conduit under the sidewalk with a hose to clean it out.
Kevin, unfortunately, one of the sides of the sidewalk runs right up to the foundation of the house, so water blasting a hole next to the existing conduit would still require me to bust up the concrete either by the house or the entire width. That is why I want to use the existing old good portion that runs under the concrete and up the side of the house, and splice in new wires at a junction box. Am I way off base? I got 3 Polaris multi-tap connectors, I'll get 3 more for the splice junctions. What do I do with the blunt cut old existing white wire? Just leave it blunt cut or coat the end with liquid insulation.
Okay, so much for boring a new conduit piece under the sidewalk. Was thinking that both sides of the walkway had soil/dirt. If using the Polaris tap connectors, you will need a large enough junction box to house the Polaris connectors. Forget using conduit bodies, pound fittings, since the Polaris tap connectors will not fit inside. You will need junction boxes with a blank cover plate. Junction boxes will work, but keep in mind that if the JBs are on the exterior of the home, they need to be not only accessible, but also need to be rated as a NEMA 3 or type for wet conditions. Yes, for the cut white wire, paste a few coats of liquid electrical tape over it and let it dry. Once dry, wrap it up with traditional black electrical tape.
Kevin, thanks for all the advice. You have been a great help. We'll rate 5 stars, best Keith.
Okay Keith, very good. No problem, glad to assist. Unfortunately, the electrician who wired the AC unit made it very difficult for problems such as yours. Take care, stay safe and have a good evening. Thanks. Kevin. Thank you for the positive service rating. Much appreciated. If you have any other questions, just let me know. The next time you have a home improvement or an electrical question, place my name on the question and send it to my attention, Kevin, and I'll be more than happy to assist you. Take care, stay safe and have a great holiday weekend. Thanks again. Kevin. Hello again Keith. Thank you very much for the bonus, but that was not necessary. It is very much appreciated. Thank you again. If you have any other questions, just let me know. The next time you have a home improvement or an electrical question, place my name on the question and send it to my attention, Kevin, and I'll be more than happy to assist you. Take care and thanks again. Kevin.
If you have a home improvement or appliance question and want to chat with an expert now, visit justanswer.com/ythi.